I steal, you rat bastards. I have the best blades in the business.
We are talking Critters Attack, also known as Critters 5. This one is directed by Bobby Miller, who has directed a number of kind of shorts mainly before, done a bit of kind of acting, voice work, that sort of thing. And this one actually stars Tashiana Washington, who is our kind of our main character here, but you also have a supporting role with Dee Wallace. Now that's really important, I suppose, because Dee Wallace was actually in the original Critters movie, although here she is playing a different character. But without spoiling anything, it does make sense in universe, if that makes sense, if you are familiar with the kind of the Critters world, so to speak. So in case you aren't, Critters was kind of a low-budget response to the Gremlins films, kind of small creatures causing havoc. And it was fairly popular in its own right, and it spawned 4 movies and then recently a TV show, which I have not seen, admittedly, but I have seen the kind of the 4 original films, and I was a huge fan of the first 2, less so of the second 2. So what's the story of this one, the 5th one? So very much like the first movie, I suppose, it really has a kind of small town USA where we have 2 UFO ships crash land. And it focuses on this kind of group of 4 people. We have this kind of young woman who is babysitting her younger brother and these 2 other kind of teenagers for kind of like a rich college professor or something. And they go out in the woods one day just to for a day out, and they discover what appears to be a female and friendly critter, or krite, as the actual species is known. And this is this one that appears to be benevolent. It's kind of very cutesy and everything. It looks a bit like kind of the Mogwai, so to speak, so definitely kind of going back to their kind of Gremlins inspiration here. They take it back with them, and of course the male krites have evil intent and kind of want to follow them and essentially eat everything in sight. We have Dee Wallace, as I said, as a kind of a wild card here, who, again, I'm not going to spoil what actually happens with her, but it's a fun kind of little small role. So what do we think about Critters Attack? So let's go with the positives first of all. For me, the main positive here, I felt this movie felt right at home in the franchise. It really does just feel like the style of filmmaking that those original 4 movies were continues in with this one. And like I said, I haven't seen the series, so I don't know if that's true of the series, but it's certainly true of this movie. Even down to, it's obviously set in contemporary times, despite obviously the old ones being kind of in the 80s and early 90s and what have you, but nonetheless, just the kind of the way the camera angles are, the kind of the style of sort of storytelling, it's very much in the style of those kind of like fairly kind of simplistic kind of stories that we used to get on VHS and stuff like that in the kind of the 80s and early 90s. So it definitely kind of feels right at home in this kind of franchise, and part of that I think is down to the fact that they use primarily kind of like practical effects for all the kind of the creatures here. Now I know that was true of the series as well, but it's true here, though there is some drawbacks as we'll come on to. And yeah, it's kind of fun to see all these kind of like these critters. We have like the big critter ball, like we did in this kind of the second movie. Yeah, and then there's obviously you have kind of different kind of like critters that are a little bit kind of have their own sort of distinct look. Our main one's got kind of like a gammy eye, our main bad guy, but there's like a bald one with like a white streak in his hair, things like this. I think our lead character, played by Tashiana Washington, is a very kind of affable and likeable character, and makes for a quite likeable kind of protagonist who you kind of root for. And there are some kind of quite kind of fun kind of line deliveries with her I thought were quite good. The humour here, I feel, is somewhat juvenile for my taste, but some people kind of may like it. But we'll come on to again the humour in a second. And there is a reasonable amount of kind of gooey effects when the critters explode. There's kind of like this green slime that kind of goes everywhere. And obviously, it being a made-for-TV movie, they can't go too gory, but nonetheless, they can get away with having kind of exploding krites and lots of kind of gooey mess there. But there is a reasonably high body count, but not a particularly gory one. What doesn't work for me, The thing with this film for me, first and foremost, I would say, is the weird low energy of it. It just feels like everyone's kind of taking it easy whilst they're making this film. All of the actors never really seem to be in any kind of like, or the characters never seem to be in too much kind of distress. They just seem kind of very matter of fact, kind of those monsters, that sort of thing. But the action just seems kind of slow paced. And just the kind of the actual, the pacing of the film is just, it just seems a little bit kind of like low energy. Is the best way I can kind of describe it. The critters themselves, I feel like, are less characters in this one, more plot devices. Even though the critters themselves never really were massively kind of like, had huge characters themselves, they did get a little bit, you felt they were kind of like more intelligent. I mean, obviously in the first films we see them talking in their language and stuff like that, and you don't really get that here. They just seem to be more kind of just like wild animals, so to speak, without kind of any of the kind of like the actual personalities, so to speak, from the earlier couple of films at least. Going back to these practical effects, I feel the point of contention will be this kind of female critter, because she really looks like a puppet. Yeah, and obviously this is where maybe the practical effects weren't such a good idea, because she's very static. She just kind of like sits there and she just looks like a puppet. And when you kind of are watching this film, you're reminded of, I mean, Critters is kind of a low budget spin on the Gremlins franchise, but there were lower budget versions like Munchies and stuff like that. And I reviewed one recently, that name escapes me, but this one seems like a kind of one, this puppet seems like a creature from those like real low budget kind of like Munchies movies and stuff like that. It just does not look particularly good. I get what they were going for, and it has these kind of like long eyelashes. It's a little bit on the nose, I feel. Trying to kind of make it look more cute, but kind of staying with kind of the species, I suppose. But yeah, it was a little bit of a misjudgment, I feel. To be honest with you, that doesn't have much, that sort of critter itself doesn't really have a lot of impact on the story, so to speak. It's more just the device to make these critters follow these kids. But in itself, it does very little, to be honest. But so I can kind of, I won't hammer down on it too much, but I feel some people will kind of really be put off by it. But other than that, I gotta say, I don't think the acting was particularly, so this kind of goes into this kind of, again, this kind of low energy feel that I just felt this movie had. Everyone just seems to be kind of very much just blasé with their kind of like their line delivery. I just didn't feel that there was enough emotion put into any of the kind of scenes. It's obviously a kind of a cheesy, tongue-in-cheek movie, but nonetheless, you never really felt like these characters were in danger, and the ones that were just, you know, it just didn't seem like a particularly kind of like gripping movie, because everyone just doesn't feel like they're kind of taking it any type of seriously. And then, like I've mentioned, the humour here doesn't work for me. There's very much kind of, you know, the humour where we have this goofy kind of park ranger looking up at a bird, and a bird shits in it and hits him in the face. That sort of thing, to me, it's not sophisticated humour at all. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be, but I feel it kind of veers into a little bit too kind of juvenile and kind of slapsticky humour. And I also think that maybe the lack of gore here maybe put some hardcore horror fans off. Overall, I don't think this is necessarily a bad movie, but I feel it certainly doesn't kind of elevate and get the franchise back up to the first two films, and it more sort of stays to the kind of like the 3 and 4 movies, and it's kind of maybe on par with those ones. But I would say it's watchable. Certainly, kind of like I said, it kind of fits at home with the franchise. You can easily watch this one if you wanted to do a bit of a critter marathon. But yeah, it just doesn't do anything really new with this kind of like this franchise, outside of introducing this kind of female crite, which I think was a little bit of a misjudgment to begin with anyway. So 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.